How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
They don't apply. I guess.
There were two people at the last meeting. So, welcome back.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. You have before you the minutes of the last meeting. A motion's in order for those minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept those minutes.
All right, motion been made, second?
I'll second.
All right, motion been made and second. Those people that were, or any corrections, additions, I should say. If not, then the members that were present, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Mr. Stewart, your first request of the evening, please. Please mark all members present. Will you do that?
Yes, sir. Our first case for this evening is from Mr. Andrew Brunsman, who is the Executive Director of Be Concerned, who is the property owner at 525 Graves Avenue. And they are looking for a conditional use permit and a variance to install several signs, one being on the underneath the existing sign on the front wall, the second one above the garage door on the lower level on the west side of the building, and a freestanding sign at the driveway entrance onto Graves Avenue. The site is located on Graves Avenue near the intersection of Watson Road and currently has a social service center. The property to the west has a two-family residence. The property to the north is currently vacant. The property to the east is the Erlanger Central Firehouse, and the property to the south is the Erlanger Ellesmere School District. The subject property and property with the two-family resident are within the residential 3 zone. The vacant property is the Commonwealth Station Core 2 zone, and the firehouse and school properties are within the residential 1F zone. The R3 zone permits multifamily residences. It also conditionally permits a variety of uses, including social service centers located adjacent to an arterial street. The Direction 2030, which is the area-wide comprehensive plan adopted by the Kenton County Planning Commission on September 4th, 2014, identifies the reference site and the two-family resident property as a for residential uses with a density of 14.1 to 30.0 dwelling units per net acre. The vacant property is identified as mixed uses, and the firehouse and school property is identified as other community facilities. On November 26, 2012, the Erlanger Board of Adjustments approved a conditional use permit application for a wall sign that is 32 square feet in area. The applicant is proposing to install an additional sign under the previously approved wall sign, with the new sign being 7 feet wide by 2 feet tall for an area of 14 square feet. They're also proposing to install a wall sign over the garage door at the lower level. The new sign is 9 feet wide by 2 feet tall for an area of 18 square feet. And the freestanding sign where driveway meets the Graves Avenue is proposed to be 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall for an area of 6 square feet, and the overall height of the sign will be 3 feet. Section 14.9E1 states the freestanding sign shall be a maximum of 40 square feet, and 14.9E2 states that each institutional use shall also be allowed one wall sign for each public entrance to a building. Such wall signs shall not exceed 4 square feet and shall not be illuminated. And 14.9E3 states one permanent wall sign per street frontage shall be a maximum of 2 square feet for each 1 foot of wall that the sign is being mounted on, up to a maximum of 150 square feet with a maximum letter height of 36 inches. Section 10.10C states that social service centers and custom accessory buildings and uses, including signs, shall be subject to approval by the Board of Adjustments. They are requesting a variance in sign area for the sign over the garage door. The variance requested is 14 square feet.
Okay, those of you that are either going to speak for or against, please stand to this request. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And I assume you're the person making the request, correct? Would you please step to the podium, state your name, and state your reason for your request?
My name is Andrew Brunsman. I'm the Executive Director for My name is Andrew Brunsman. I'm the Executive Director for Be Concerned Incorporated. We are here requesting the variance for our signs tonight. As of February 1st, Be Concerned has acquired United Ministries, so we have merged to provide services out here in Erlanger. The signs that we're requesting to be put up are simply a change of ownership. So the signs are just Be Concerned logo signs, and then to advertise the thrift store, we needed to make some changes to the hours and things like that. That's the purpose of the request.
Okay, assuming the two signs that you're requesting, one's on the, underneath the existing, which we have, reference to that. As far as the building did not change as far as what the use of the building is for.
Correct. The
being
use is
used
still
for.
a social service center and food pantry.
Social center, or service center and the thrift store. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or anything you might want to ask the gentleman? All right, no further questions, then a motion's in order.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to grant the application, Mr. Andrew Burnsman, to install proposed signs as shown on the submitted plans within 1 year of the date of the board's decision. The granting of this variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. This motion shall be pursuant to the factual determination from the evidence provided, including without limitation to the staff report, which is hereby determined to be accurate.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion been made and second, Mr. Armbruster. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Stewart, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Molly,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes?
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Armbruster,
Yes.
Mr. Newsom.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, your second request of the evening, please.
Second request is from, hopefully I get this right, Mr. Potvin and Mr. Lowe, who are owners of the Wicked Dragon Tattoo. And they're looking to have a conditional use permit to open a tattoo parlor in an existing tenant space. The site is located on the west side of Dixie Highway between McAlpin Avenue and Linwood Street and has a two-tenant space building. The property to the south is a vacant retail space. The property to the west is a single-family resident, and the property to the north is a retail establishment, Family Dollar. The properties across Dixie Highway are in Ellesmere and have a retail and repair business, Luke's, a parking lot, and a personal service business, Gary Williams Martial Arts. The subject property and all the properties on Dixie Highway are within the neighborhood commercial zone. The property to the west is in the residential 1F zone. Neighborhood commercial zone permits a variety of retail and personal service uses. The zone also conditionally permits a variety of uses, including tattoo parlors. Direction 2030, the area-wide comprehensive plan update adopted by the Kenton County Planning Commission in September of 2014, identifies all the properties, the reference site and all the surrounding properties on both sides of Dixie Highway as commercial uses. On September 26, 1994, the Erlanger Board of Adjustments heard an appeal of the zoning administrator's decision that a proposed tattoo parlor at this location was not a permitted use in the neighborhood commercial zone. The board voted to uphold the appeal with the stipulations that the term tattoo did not appear on the exterior of the building and that the business did not operate after 9 p.m. The Erlanger City Council passed an ordinance on March 19, 2019, amending the zoning ordinance by adding tattoo parlors and pet hotels as conditionally permitted uses. The applicants are proposing to open up a tattoo parlor at the reference site with no major changes to the exterior of the building. Section 10.16C of the Erlanger zoning ordinance states that the conditionally permitted uses, including tattoo parlors, shall be subject to the approval of the Erlanger Board of Adjustments. On April 22, 2019, the Erlanger Board of Adjustments approved a conditional use permit for a tattoo parlor with the condition 12 parking spaces dedicated for use by the tattoo parlor are installed on the subject property. Section 11.0C1D states that off-street parking facilities for commercial, institutional, industrial, and recreational zones, except as herein provided, may be permitted in minimum front, side, and rear yards, provided that all off-street parking facilities be set back a minimum of 5 feet from any street right-of-way lines. Section 11.0C2A states that all off-street parking facilities shall be located on the same lot as the building served, except for permitted uses located within multifamily, industrial, commercial, and recreational zones may supply off-street parking on contiguous lots upon approval of the zoning administrator, provided that off-street parking is in compliance with 11.0E, which is the shared parking provisions. In addition, the off-street parking shall be located in the same zone as the use being served. Section 11.0C2C states that off-street parking, as required for a conditional use, may be permitted to locate on another lot than the building or use being served is located when approved by the Board of Adjustments, provided that said parking is located within reasonable walking distance of the use or building being served and available at all times without restrictions for said purposes. Section 11.2D states that beauty shops and/or barber shops shall provide a minimum of 2 parking spaces per barber and/or beauty shop operator. Section 11.2HH states that for other uses not listed, tattoo parlors, based on a study, can have parking spaces based on a study to be prepared by the owner-operator. The number of spaces to be required shall be determined according to the type and use and estimated number of total trips generated during peak conditions, inbound and outbound, the estimated parking duration per vehicle trip, which is the turnover rates, based on the estimated number of trips generated and average parking duration per trip, calculate the number of spaces required, and the estimated number of employees, at least one parking space to be provided for each 2 employees based on shift of maximum employment. Section 9.12B1 states that except for as in here provided, the lawful use of any structure or land existing at the time of adoption of this ordinance may be continued, although such use does not conform to the provisions of this ordinance. It shall become a non-conforming use. However, the no non-conforming use or structure may be enlarged or extended beyond its area of use at the time it becomes a legal non-conforming use, unless and until the use is brought into conformance with all provisions of this ordinance. And Section 9.12B2 states that except as herein provided, any lawful non-conforming structure existing at the time of adoption of this ordinance may be occupied, operated, and maintained in a manner of good repair, but no non-conforming structure shall be enlarged or extended unless the enlargement or extension can be and is made in compliance with all the provisions of this ordinance.
Okay. With that being said, those of you that are either going to speak for or against, please stand and raise your right hand. You all swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. I should say the person making the request, and this is a revisit of this request, but making the new request, I should say, Please come up to the podium, state your name, and state your reason for your request, okay?
Good evening. My name is Rob Hassman, and I'm legal counsel for the applicants who will speak here in just a moment. I hope everyone is well tonight. As you state, we're here on a reapplication and a new application for a conditional use permit submitted by my clients, Gabriel Lowe and David Potavin, as well as their business, the Wicked Dragon Tattoo and Body Piercing LLP. Specifically, my clients have applied to obtain a conditional use permit to operate and own a tattoo parlor and body piercing parlor at the premises, as the zoning administrator stated, at 3926 Dixie Highway, Erlanger, Kentucky, 41018, which is currently in the NC zone. As he also stated, on March 19th, 2019, the Erlanger City Council passed Ordinance 2477, which amended the Erlanger zoning code and now states that a tattoo parlor can be a conditional use within this zone. As you all obviously also know, pursuant to KRS 100.237, the Board of Adjustments has the power to grant or deny applications on for conditional use permits, and that's why we're here tonight. I would respectfully request that the board grant this application for multiple reasons I'll get into in a moment, but the bottom line is, you'll hear from what I'm going to say, my client has complied with all provisions of the code, and I'll demonstrate why. I know a big issue that's been discussed and was discussed by Mr. Stewart is an issue with respect to parking. And as Mr. Stewart stated, pursuant to section 9.12B1 of the code, any nonconforming use which existed upon the adoption of the code becomes a legal nonconforming use until otherwise. And when this building was built and when this ordinance was adopted, this building had no parking. It has never had parking. So therefore, the use of any business, if we're looking at the 50,000 foot level, just being any business rather than whether this is a tattoo parlor, the operation of any business in this space would be a non-conforming use which existed. No business has been abandoned, and at the time this was adopted, there was no parking, meaning that any business could theoretically, under the code, operate thereafter without parking under the code. Additionally, as Mr. Stewart stated, under 9.12C1, it deals with non-conforming structures. This was a non-conforming structure when the code was adopted. It had no parking. The building has not been expanded. It has not been reduced. Its use has not been expanded or reduced. So therefore, the non-parking issue should be granted for that reason. But I digress. Regardless, my clients have, at the request of the board, gone out and obtained a lease for 12 parking spaces across the street in the city of Ellesmere, which I'll get into. The reason they got 12 was because the board, as Mr. Stewart stated, stated that this was similar to a barber shop. There needed to be 2 parking spaces for each employee. Our client stated on the record it has up to 6 employees, i.e. 12 parking spaces. The parking does not have to be in the city of Erlanger. It also does not have to be in this current zone. It just has to be within a quote-unquote reasonable walking distance. If you look at section 11.0C2A of the code, it states that when you are doing a permitted use, the parking needs to be either on the plat, or it needs to be on an adjacent parcel within the same zone. So that's for a permitted use, as we all know. However, section 11.2C2 states what parking must be provided for a non-conforming use. For a conditional use, which is what we have here. This section does not state that it has to be in the zone. It does not state it has to be on an adjoining parcel. it doesn't state it has to be in the city. All it states is that the parking must be located within a reasonable walking distance. When people who draft ordinances, as I believe Mr. Volker or any of your zoning administrators can confirm, when we draft things and we take one provision and we put in certain language, such as when we have a permitted use, we want it to be in the zone, or we want it to be on a contiguous parcel. We do that for a reason. When that language is devoid from another section, that was also done for a reason. And I believe that that language is devoid and not within the conditional use because it is intended that these are strange circumstances from time to time. And we needed to find a way to let people operate conditional uses which don't meet the permitted uses. So with that said, again, we have obtained, and I will give the board, with permission to approach, a copy of a signed and notarized amendment to my client's lease. The landlord of my client's premises owns a property directly across the street in the city of Erlanger. You'll see on the exhibit, it shows where our facility is, and then it shows the 12 parking spaces which are dedicated to Wicked Dragon with no other business use. So that meets also the shared parking because no other business are permitted to use them under this lease, and they're within 300 feet of the business. We think that's definitely within walking distance, and for that reason, we think that my client has complied, and with your permission, I'll bring this up for your review.
Yes, sir.
Nothing else now, unless there's additional questions for me.
Let's wait before you.
Oh, okay.
The 12 parking provisions are located where?
Directly across the street. If you look at the exhibit, you'll see where it's marked WD Tattoo, and then you'll see it's across the street. I believe it's behind Luke's, guys. Behind Luke's, at the back of the parking lot, there's 12 spaces specifically designated for just our client's use. Mr. Lucarelli, who's the owner of both parcels, has leased those specifically to my clients.
All right, with that being said, and of course, we're addressing it in a different location in which you're bringing before us tonight. How many total parking places does Luke have there?
That I am not sure, sir.
Well, that's a question. Second is, I think if I counted correct, and I may be wrong, that I drove by Luke's to see. And I think there's a total of 12 parking places that are marked off, that if somebody pulled in and parked. Now, you're telling me that Luke's has marked off 12 parking places for a tattoo parlor, is that correct?
Well, we just signed and had the lease notarized. The plan is to put signs and also note.
With those 12,
Yes, sir.
if they pulled in the designated parking places or where they're marked parking, then not being negative, but that doesn't leave any parking for Luke's patrons. Okay?
Well,
I think if I look at that correct, if I stand corrected if I'm wrong. Let me clarify a point. The concern of parking that we have is the concern of the highway, which you, Mr. Stewart, and you all have addressed it, within 300 feet. And the issue is whether or not people are going to go down to the light at Garvey, cut across, come back up, and go over. Now, that was the parking concern,
understood.
and I think that was with the concern of the last meeting. It's the
I-
safety aspect of it with regard to Dixie Highway.
I can understand that
Right.
concern, and I
But if
think
you're
it's a
saying
valid
that-
concern.
You're saying to us that Luke's has marked off 12 spots over there.
I'm telling you that my client has a signed, notarized lease entitling them with the exclusive right to use them. A landowner, being Mr. Lucarelli, can do whatever he wants with his land. He's leased them to my client. If you want to put a condition of granting the permit that we get signs stating these are only for my client, anyone else parking can be towed, I'm sure we can work that out.
No, I'm not
Okay.
into that. I mean, in other words, we're dealing with Erlanger.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and he's dealing with Ellsworth.
I understand.
As far as his parking. So we can only speak primarily for Erlanger. That was a concern. That was the only issue the last time.
I understand.
There was not an issue with the tattoo parlor, ever. That's a permitted use.
Yes, sir.
The issue was the parking.
I understand.
And so that's where we're at, and we have others to hear from, but I understand what you presented to us. Anybody else have any questions for him?
You gave a date earlier as to when the Erlanger Council approved that as a tattoo parlor.
No. I stated that the Erlanger City Council approved an ordinance which amended, it was ordinance 2477 by your board. It amended the City of Erlanger overall zoning ordinance to add tattoo parlors as conditional uses that the board could approve within the NC zone. It was a text amendment to your zoning code.
Do you have the date on that again?
I do. It is, it's,
I think that was tattoos and pet motels. Am I correct?
tattoo parlor.
There was two issues at that time. Any other questions, this gentleman? Okay,
Thank you.
I thank others. Would you come up and state your name and reason for your request, please?
Hi, my name is Gabriel Lowe. My business partner is Dave Potovin, and we are the owners of Wicked Dragon Tattoo and Piercing, LLLP. First, before I get into anything, I want to thank everybody. Thank you for this hearing. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you for everybody being here. Definitely really appreciate all the support. I think there's some confusion on those 12-car parking spots. They're not in Luke's. Nick Lucarelli, he owns like quite a few different properties on the other side of the street and our property. So we're not talking about the Luke's parking, the parking lot. We're talking about, it's another property on, I guess it's south or north corner of Cross Street and Carlisle. It's a totally separate parking lot, and it's for like an old, I guess a warehouse that he is not leasing at all right now, and nor does he ever use that parking for that warehouse. So it was just a vacant 12-car parking lot that Luke's customers, they don't use. Nobody's used it for years, and that is why he is leasing it to us. So I know that you had a concern, where does Luke's customers park? They park in Luke's parking lot. This parking lot's separate if you look at the exhibit. Going back to 2009, I built my very first tattoo shop. It's Red Dragon Tattoo and Piercing. It's up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Before that, I was a house designer. I designed houses. I was a professional. I just had one little tiny tattoo, and I wanted to build a tattoo shop that had class, something that everybody could go to and feel comfortable at, whether it's soccer moms, whether it's students, professionals, social misfits, anybody could go and feel comfortable. Through the help of a lot of artists, a lot of other people helping build it. 10 years later, I'm very proud to say that we've probably tattooed maybe it was 14 to 15,000 tattoos. We've been very successful. We've supported families. I mean, that tattoo shop has taken care of so many different families. I'm very proud to be a part of that. Dave, he was one of my artists. He came to me last summer, and he said, "Hey, let's build another tattoo shop." And I thought it was a great idea, so we started looking around. We looked around in Covington, and we looked around in other areas, and we absolutely decided that we want to have our tattoo shop here in Erlanger. It's where we wanted to build our home. He already lived here. I moved my family down here, and it's where we want to be for the next 40 years. We want to build a business here, and I have a little tiny baby you've probably heard a few times. I mean, she's 14 months, a beautiful wife, and we want to be here in Erlanger. We want to build our business down here. I don't know if you have pictures of our shop, but we took the building and we spent all winter long doing everything we could to turn basically an empty storefront into something that we could be proud of. You could shuffle through the pictures if you want. And you could see that we didn't go in there and just slap a coat of paint on it. We really did everything we could to have a professional business with class. Okay, thank you. We've went through all the inspections. We've had plumbing inspections. We have our occupational license. We've had plumbing inspections. We've even Board of Health. The Board of Health came by. They checked out everything. They were there for 3 hours, and the Board of Health has given us a 100% green light to tattoo. They said, congratulations, shook my hand, and said you could start tattooing. And I said, no, I'm sorry, we can't. This was a day after the last hearing. I said we don't have permission to yet. So here I am. I'm begging. I'm respectfully requesting. Please grant this request. It's going to make a huge difference in my life, my family's life, and a lot of other families' life. We appreciate it. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Question,
Yes.
waiting area, inside,
What's that? I'm sorry.
inside waiting area. How many will it hold?
How many customers?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Probably 10 customers,
In addition to the people receiving tattoos?
possibly on a busy day, possibly. It's not going to be like that all the time, but possibly, yes.
Seemed to be one of the problems with the last shop that was in. On Saturdays, they had such a large crowd, seemed like, and the parents brought their kids, and they were all waiting outside of that area. Sometimes there were as many as 15 to 20 people waiting outside.
Wow. Yeah, in my 10 years of running the other tattoo shop, I've never had 20 people waiting outside my shop. So maybe Mother says, I don't know. That seems like a lot of
I'm just
people.
concerned about the people who are coming to get tattoos. Are they going to be waiting inside?
Yes, our lobby, we have a beautiful lobby. So yeah, everybody should be able to fit inside. And as you know, I mean, there was a business there for 22 years. They changed names in the middle, but I didn't know that they had any issues. I know that the police were never called on them in all of that time. When we were applying for one of our license, not a single time was police called in that 22-year time period. I mean, so I didn't know of any huge problems there. I mean, I have actually talked to Craig. Craig came in and shook my hand and wished me luck. And so, yeah, no, I don't know of any other issues like that.
Okay, now you stated that you all are actually the owners of the business itself,
Yes,
and then you have a lease on the property itself
yes,
from the, Luke Center over there, the owners of the Luke Center.
yes,
And I believe it was stated the last time that you are planning on potentially having as many as 6 tattoo artists in there at one time. Is that correct?
And we're planning on having what, I'm sorry?
As many as 6 operators or
Yes,
tattoo artists in there at one time. Is that correct?
yes. 6 total. We won't have more than that because we don't have more stations than that. So, yes, a total of 6.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
One other concern, and I realize that the last gentleman spoke that they had marked off 12 parking places to the back of what was considered Old Sid's parking lot. The drugstore, way back in the back corner.
Kentucky Motors is actually,
It joins, it's in other words, Dix Highway's here and it's back in this corner. Oh,
No,
back over in Kentucky.
it's the old Kentucky,
Oh,
the old Kentucky
back on Cross
Motors
Street.
building is what.
Right.
Cross Street.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it has nothing to do with,
Yeah, Nick owns that property, so he had the power to go ahead and lease us those 12 parking spots. So
Yeah, I
we just
understand that.
amended our lease
Okay, I
to
understand
include
that.
them.
but
Yep.
then, in order to get to your property, they would have to walk down the block, down across the front of the block to across the sidewalk, the street.
But
at
it's
the light,
definitely within walking distance.
Another block back.
Yeah, it's definitely within walking distance though, sir.
But I'm talking about, well, I'm not disputing that.
Yeah,
I'm talking about that actually it's 3 blocks away.
it's within walking distance. Yep.
Right, I understand that. Now, just a statement I'm making.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, with that being said, and I may be asking the wrong person, was there any contact being made to any other group or people in Erlanger businesses about adjoining properties, about possibility of parking places, or?
Yeah, there has been contact with Frisch's, and we have got a verbal okay for 12 parking spots on, I don't know what, is that the north side of their parking lot? The GM at that location, Jerry, has said that she doesn't see a problem in it, and we said, well, we need an official lease. So last week, we were trying to go through Frisch's and get 12 more parking spots in addition to the 12 that we've already provided. But the whole logistics of doing that and the time period we had wasn't possible. But there is a very good chance that we're going to have an additional 12 parking spots here very soon. But we didn't want to bring it up because it wasn't a for sure thing yet. We just have a verbal.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
Are you and your employees here? They're gonna work at the Erlangers?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to stand up, the artists that are, and then, yeah, this is Steve-O and Steven, I'm sorry, James and Sarah and Eddie. And my business partner, Dave, he was going to kind of tell you a little bit about them and their families, just really shortly, if you don't mind.
My only question was, do they live in Erlanger, but just by any chances for?
As far as who else lives in Erlanger?
Do any of the employees actually live in Erlanger?
No, Sarah lives right outside Erlanger.
Sure.
Yeah.
She should move in.
Oh, yeah, right outside too. Edgewood.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, it's going to make a huge difference to their life as well.
Okay, any other
Thank
questions for this gentleman? Okay, next person to speak, please.
All right, thanks, Gabriel. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to speak about the team and give a little background on the people that we call our Wicked Dragon family. So Eddie Smith. Eddie is an award-winning tattoo artist and piercer. He was also the first person I met when I started in this industry. He took me under his wing, taught me the tools I needed to be a successful artist. Eddie was also the one that introduced me to Gabriel. I am grateful to have Eddie by my side as one of our Wicked Dragon artists. Sarah is an incredible artist. When she's not with her husband and children, you will always find an iPad in her hand creating beautiful arts of work. We're excited for what she will bring to Wicked Dragon. Kyle Bishop, he's not here today, he's working. Kyle is our second piercer, newly married and expecting his first child. Kyle currently works for Gabriel in the Cincinnati shop at Red Dragon. Kyle will be joining our team part-time, and we are lucky to have him with us. Last but certainly not least, our 2 apprentices, Stephen and James. Apprentices are a vital part of our tattooing industry. They are our right hands. They're here to help us with all our daily tasks, and in return, they are taught the fundamentals of the trade. They're the ones that we pass our torch on to. So as you can see, we are just trying to support our families by doing the work that we love in a city that we are proud to call home. So we're just standing here today asking you to give us our license so we can put these families to work and they can support their families.
Okay, appreciate that. Now I have a question relative to our previous and now tonight's meeting. And I asked him, and, relative to some parking in Erlanger. Are you the person that made that contact?
Yes,
All right, you're talking about with Frisch's.
yes,
And do you feel confident or feel that you can get that approved?
yes.
You were telling the board that you could feel that you could confidently get it.
Yeah, I already got the verbal from the GM. Getting somebody at Frisch's Corporate to contact back is a difficult task.
Well, I mean in writing. In other words, not just verbal, but I'm talking, if you feel confident you can get that in writing.
I will sure try to get that in writing.
You understand our concern, or my concern?
Yes, and like over at Family, all the employees from being next door at Family Dollar, they don't mind us parking their lot. But of course, we know Family Dollar is a big corporation, and they're not gonna give out a.
But, I mean, rather than just saying,
Right.
okay, they said it's okay, or he said, or she said, you had something in writing, not specifically marked off you, if you could be there. That's my question.
Okay,
So you have made that contact?
yes.
Okay. Any other questions for this gentleman? All right, next.
Hello, I'm Tyson Hermes. I'm a councilman here at City of Erlanger. I had not actually planned on having an address for you, but I did just want to, Mr. Newsom, I wanted to ask if you could articulate the reason why you were asking that question about Frisch's. They've given you a lease for 12 parking spaces, and so long as it's within a reasonable distance, it shouldn't matter whether it's in the city of Erlanger or the city of Ellesmere.
You're asking me why I asked that
Yeah,
question?
I was just asking
Okay,
if
well,
you
I'm going to
could
go ahead, since you brought it
articulate
up in the meeting, I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and if I may be permitted, I've had a long concern about, I'm speaking for me, you asked me. I'm not opposed to a tattoo parlor. The tattoo parlor was there before. I was on the committee when it was approved the last time. The concern is that that's the last building that's left in Erlanger, with the exception of Dixie Club, that has absolutely zero parking. Okay, that's a major issue. Has to be off-site. Not only is it off-site, but it's off-site and the parking permitted is permitted in a city other than in Erlanger, okay? And I can't speak for Ellesmere. I'm not part of, in other words, I can only act on the behalf of Erlanger. And I understand what they're stating. My primary concern was that in that building, the furniture fair part is vacant. You agree with that? They're wanting to occupy what used to be the tattoo parlor, okay? We were here, and they came back because of the fact that it was stated that if it was vacant for a year, then they had to come back and get another conditional use for that building, okay? In addition to that, there is another room or a place that's beside that building that Luke's on, and they have meetings in there once a month. And they have sewing meetings, and they occupy from 50 to 70 people, okay, in that room. Now, again, total number of parking places, 0, okay? Now, my concern was for the city of Erlanger. I didn't want somebody to get hit or possibly get hit crossing the highway And then somebody come up, and always behind a accident or somebody being hit, a lot of times there's suits that follows, you know, that liability, who's liable. And my concern was that Erlanger, I don't know that they ever granted Luke's occupancy permit for that, to have meetings over there for 50 to 70 people.
I doubt it.
You know, we're talking. The tattoo parlor was there, I know that. I was there when we dealt with that. So my concern was, and I asked Mr. Stewart prior to the last meeting about how many parking places we would need for the for operators. I asked the gentleman when he spoke, he said, we're gonna have 6 people in there. And that's where the 12 came from. In other words, we needed 2 parking places per workstation.
Yeah.
So that's
makes
why we have
sense.
12 parking places. That's why that came up, and it's in the minutes, or on the film. So, to address you, I hope I've done it in such a way that my concern is, and every motion has this, health, public safety, welfare. For people to walk from Kentucky Motors, which is a block away, and that's fine. I don't care if they want to walk there. It doesn't affect me at all. Walk down the whole block of Garvey, and then walk back up what would be equivalent of almost another block. That's fine if that's what they want to do. But I can only answer in my conscience of what takes place in Erlanger.
Okay.
If this is a different situation, you can look at it either way you want to. But we're here as a board for the city of Erlanger. I'm a representative of the city of Erlanger. So my concern may not be today, but it may, and it has nothing to do with the tattoo parlor. It has to do with the fact that we have, what happens, and were we negligent, or were we liable, or should it ever been an issue? But I'm telling you now, when there's an accident, they're always looking for the person to cover the accident. Who can cover it the most?
Sure.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. I appreciate your concern for public safety. I will say, the city has spent a lot of money on sidewalks, and there are sidewalks through that entire area, including crosswalks. I think there is, I'm not going to dispute your opinion, but I
Oh, no, I
definitely
don't
think there is
question, I
a
didn't question the
safe
sidewalk.
way.
Only thing I questioned was the actual parking places.
Okay.
Had nothing to do with, the sidewalks are just as good in Ellesmere as they are in Erlanger in that area. That, I'm sorry, but that doesn't have anything.
Sure.
It has nothing to do with
We
the
call
tattoo
ourselves
parlor.
a walkable city.
Has nothing
And,
to do with tattoo parlor.
and we're getting there. But, even out here where we have crosswalks and sidewalks and, kids walking to school, we have issues with people, kids getting hit by cars. So, you can only protect so much, and denying them this right because of the concern of people crossing the street should be left to the
And
clientele.
I believe, I'm correct now, you're on city council. And one of your concerns is, I'm sure, as well as the mayor, what's going to happen to where the furniture fair was at? And, what happens to that corner? Where does that come in the picture of Erlanger in relationship to sidewalks and everything else? You know what I mean? In other words, it's a vacant piece of property.
Well, and it's a tough parcel because there's not any parking. And,
Thank you.
the owner will find themselves in a tough spot to find a tenant for that because it doesn't have parking. In this case, we have an owner who's found a tenant that wants to be in that building, and we're denying them, or we have denied them in the past because there's not parking on the parcel. There's never going to be parking on the parcel.
I understand that, but, okay. We just recently saw a tremendous amount of development on that corner on the other end, even though it's Family Dollar, where they took down the old Pinks and all the other stuff that was on the corner there. We redirected traffic into it, and we're able to get some off-street for the buses, things of that nature, to be able to load and unload without having to do it right on Dixie Highway. So what I'm saying is that times have changed. People can't park there. They used to park in front of the building all the time. It was not an issue. So I hope you appreciate my concerns and where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Hermes, I may make one
Yes, sir.
comment. We did at the last meeting have a council member testify as to the safety of crossing the street there rather than coming down to the crosswalk. That person testified that the people park and they just run across the street. So,
I believe you're referring to Mrs. Skidmore,
Ms. Skidmore,
and she also voted against it because she didn't think that there should be two tattoo parlors so close to each other.
Oh, you're talking about them voted against it where?
When it came to the city council voting
Oh, we were not.
in favor of the
Oh, you're talking about when you had.
conditional use of a
approve it
tattoo
as a
parlor in
conditional-
the NC zone.
Well, we wouldn't have any way of.
Yeah,
unless
I know,
we
I'm
were
just
watching. Yeah.
making the point that,
Yeah,
yeah,
all right.
okay,
Anybody else have any questions for him?
thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, with that being said, I think, Mr. Stewart, there's two issues tonight that we need to deal with. One is, you've heard the request from the people that they use the 12 parking places that have been leased to them or in writing to them and leased from Ellsmer on Cross Street, formerly the Kentucky Motors property, or adjoining the Kentucky Motors property. That would be the one request in order for them to be able to go ahead and operate. But in order for that to take place, I think that last meeting, when it was said that the conditional use of this property would be based on the fact that they provided 12 parking places within the city of Erlanger, or, and the property that they owned. So therefore, in order for this motion, the new request to override the old request, I would think that we would have to make in the motion that if it's a motion to grant it, that we grant this request in lieu of the fact that the owner is unable to provide parking places on the existing site with the tattoo parlor where it's located, where it would be located, and therefore, it would make then this new recommendation binding. So that was my statement, that it would be needed to be in that request, if that's a request that's to be made, if the board so approves it. With that being said, any other comments by anybody or anything? Okay, with none, then a motion's in order.
I'll make a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to grant the application of Mr. David Potvin and Mr. Gabriel Lowe to open a tattoo parlor at 3926 Dixie Highway. Granting of this conditional use permit will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or a nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. The motion shall be pursuant to the factual determinations from the evidence provided, including without limitation staff report, which is hereby determined to be accurate.
Okay. And with that motion, in order for that motion to override the previous motion of the last meeting, you also would state in there that parking would be allowed off-site.
I think what you're wanting to do is offer up, would you be agreeable to amending your motion to include language that the prior determination is set aside due to the fact that parking, that the building cannot have parking?
Can't have, they've provided,
and
or
that
they've
the
required it.
applicant- Correct, and that the applicant has now brought a written lease that allows for parking in a majority, in a nearby property.
I would agree with that.
And then that is a condition, that parking be provided nearby.
Right. So,
If
Go
if you're good with that amendment, authorize that in minutes, and then just wait for a second.
But that can be included as a part of the motion.
Yeah, I just.
That's what I'm stating, so that would
he adds it, I
then,
agree to it, I agree that, let him add that.
Because you're the only one that's making the motion.
Correct.
right, so that would override the action of the last meeting.
It just references the last.
Right, right.
I have a question that's probably more suited to you. Leases have term limits. So if we would grant this, there's no term limit that we're putting on the operation of this business. However, the lease itself, does it have a term limit? If we're using that for a basis of our decision, it would have to be unlimited.
And not necessarily, I mean, obviously to operate a business, but they're gonna have to be able to get parking, we'll just go and get parking. For some reason, this lease ends, so they'll have to go and get it somewhere else.
Well, yeah, if it's very, it's possible that, they haven't done anything with that old building in a long time, but it's possible that they could, so.
Right, I mean, that's more or less determination, like we went through some training earlier about about abandonment of use and all. That's really things handled internally by your zoning administrator. If things aren't happening that we're supposed to, that's really not the purview of this body. Because your ordinance doesn't speak of, it just says, it doesn't say a granting of easement, it just says an agreement. So I think that's something that just functions really, is outside, between property owners on. But obviously, you've got a joint owner of this property and the other property. So I would assume as long as he's trying to keep tenants, he's gonna keep providing the lease space, and he's gonna want tenants.
Yeah, all right, yeah, all right.
All right, motion been made with the amendment to the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, second, Mr. Conley. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, Mr. Stewart.
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Armbruster,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes?
Mr. Molly,
No.
Mr. Newsom,
I'm gonna explain my vote. I'm gonna go ahead and state that I have no opposition to the tattoo parlor, or the people, or the operators, or what have you. I still would have requested that permission for parking be granted by Frisch's, and I think that should have been pursued, since you stated it was Frisch's, in order to get parking on that side of the highway. And with that being a part of my statement, then I'm gonna reluctantly go ahead and vote yes, but I think you need. But I do think that you need to do what's right on the standpoint of those people, and that is go ahead and pursue your request for Frisch's, get your parking permitted over there, and go on with your business. Any questions now? All right. Those of you are here for that request. If you want to be dismissed, you may do so, and we will go on.
They'll be lining up tomorrow.
What?
They can line up tomorrow.
They might open up right now. They might be going there right now to unlock the door. He already got his Board of Health.
I think they're ready.
He gone.
Oh, sorry.
Was what that was.
Okay.
Is that right? Was that Cantor's?
Congratulations, good, welcome to the neighborhood.
All right, Mr. Stewart.
I think it was what the old door, so, yep, good deal.
Mr. Stewart, you have another request for the evening, please?
Yes, sir. Just a second. pulling up the report now. Yes, sir, we have a request from Mr. Scott Shirley, who owns 278 Madison Pike, and he's looking to obtain a dimensional variance from the requirements of the fence regulations. He's proposing to install a fence closer to the road than permitted. The site is located on Madison Pike at the intersection with Richardson Road and currently has a detached single-family residence. All adjoining properties currently have a detached single-family residence, with the exception of 276 Madison Pike, which has a commercial building. The subject property and the properties to the west of Madison Pike are within the residential 1G zone. The properties to the northeast of the intersection are within the residential suburban 7.5 zone, which is in Covington, and the properties to the southeast of the intersection are within the residential 1A zone, which is unincorporated Kenton County. The R1G zone, section 10.7, allows single-family residential dwellings, detached and qualified manufactured homes. Fences are listed as an accessory use in this zone. Direction 2030, which is the area-wide comprehensive plan adopted by the Kenton County Planning Commission on September 4th of 2014. The recommended land use plan notifies the reference site as well as all the surrounding properties for residential uses with a density of 4.1 to 7.0 dwelling units per net acre. Properties to the southeast of the intersection are identified with a density, residential uses with a density of less than 2.0 dwelling units per net acre. The applicant is proposing to install a Kentucky-style horse fence with a wire liner at the left property line, which is the right-of-way line of Richardson Road. The applicant has received a zoning permit to fence in the rest of the rear yard with the same style of fence. Section 9.4B states that on corner lots in any zone, the minimum side yard abutting the side of the street shall be 1/2 of the minimum front yard for that zone, except when such lots abut an arterial street as herein defined. A minimum front yard depth shall be provided for each street. Both Madison Pike and Richardson Road are classified as collector streets. Section 10.7D3 states that the minimum front yard setback shall be 30 feet. This makes this left side setback a minimum of 15 feet. The Richardson Road right-of-way is approximately 60 feet from the edge of the pavement near the intersection and gets wider as you travel along Madison. And gets wider as you travel along Richardson Road away from Madison Pike. The applicant is requesting a setback variance of 15 feet.
Okay, now, very quickly, with that being 15 feet, then the amount of distance between there and Richardson Road is going to be how much?
The minimum is 60 feet from the property line to the edge of the pavement.
So then with 15 feet off, that'll be within 45, or there's still going to be 60 feet?
60 feet is to the property line. If you grant the variance, 60 feet would be the closest it will be to Richardson.
Okay, that was, I wanted to make sure we understood that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, gentleman's going to speak for or against? Will you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And I assume you're the owner and you're the one making the request. Is
Yes,
that correct?
sir. Yes.
Okay, go ahead and state your reason, please.
All right, there's multiple reasons. I have 5 grandkids, so I started the fencing process and I found out that I couldn't fence my front yard, which is about approximately 3/4 of an acre. So, I mean, that's fine. So I'm trying to figure out what I could fence. I have multiple reasons. I live in a creek bottom, so there's a huge deer population in my yard. They devour everything I plant. That's one of the reasons for a fence. I've also caught coyotes on my ring security system, and I've had 2 cats come up missing, so I'm assuming that's what happened to those. Again, I have 5 grandkids, so I'm just trying to create a secure area in my backyard. I also have problems with people pulling into my driveway, like breaking down. Like, my yard must look inviting. I've been there 7 years, and I've had at least 10 people actually pull into my driveway, which is a long driveway, and park beside my cars, and I'll come out for work, and there's just some random car just parked there. Every once in a while, people are nice enough to leave a note,
saying they'll be back for the car. Sometimes they don't. I don't really cause a big fuss. Usually within a couple days, it's gone. But I do have random things come up missing out of my yard, nothing real expensive, shovels, rake. I've had a couple water containers for flowers, nothing dramatic, but there's also a drug rehab within a mile from my house, which I have no problem with people. I think it's called New Life. It's right down the street from me, and I'm not sure if people go AWOL sometimes, but I have a lot of 20-something-year-olds that cut through my yard. That's one of the reasons I got my security system. Just minor stuff. Luckily, nothing major's come up missing out of my yard. But also, I've had 3 different vehicles underneath the front part of the driveway. It's on the easement. I have a drainage ditch, and I've had 3 different vehicles cut through my yard and get stuck in that drainage ditch. So if I can get that 15-foot, I'm going to put a gate and hopefully deter people from pulling down. And for whatever reason, people will cut into my yard and go out the Madison Pike side. I see ruts all the time and track marks where people will, I guess they just want, instead of doing a U-turn, they'll just come in from the Richardson Road side and then go out through the Madison Pike side because it's pretty flat. But I see the evidence of it all the time, either ruts or just the tracks. If it's not wet out, I can see where people just drive through the yard. It's crazy. But so if I get that 15-foot, I'm going to put a gate and hopefully deter some of these people from, for one, pulling into my driveway, breaking down. There's an emergency lane out on the road. I don't know why. I guess it looks inviting. So yeah, I'm hoping to get this approved, create a little bit more secure environment.
Okay, very briefly, we're calling this a Kentucky fence or
Yeah,
raised fence. How many boards? 3, 4?
it's 4,
4, height of it,
6 foot,
wire on the inside.
wire on the inside.
So in other words, you can see through it in between the boards.
Yeah, you'll be able to see through it.
Okay, and that total height is 6 foot?
Yes,
And the rest of the property is actually surrounded with the same fence?
yes.
So in other words, it'd just be a matter of coming back to it joins each side of the house?
Yeah, from my understanding, I had to start the front corners of the house, so my front yard will be wide open.
Right. Okay, that's one question I have. Okay, anybody else have any questions for this gentleman? If not, a motion is in order.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to grant the application to Mr. Scott Shirley to install a fence at the Richardson Road right-of-way. The granting of this variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulation. The motion shall be pursuant to the factual determination from the evidence provided, including, without limitations, the staff report, which is hereby determined to be accurate.
Okay, you've heard the motion, and my understanding is, Mr. Stewart, that he would have up to 1 year to go ahead and put this into effect. Is that correct?
No, sir, for a variance, it's indefinite.
Indefinite? Okay. But I'm assuming you would want to do this right away. But anyway.
He's got some of the holes dug already.
He does.
He's ready to run.
I'm ready to rock.
Okay, we answered that question. Seconds in order.
I'll second it.
All right, motion been made and second. Roll call vote.
Mr. Armbruster,
Yes.
Mr. Molly,
Yes.
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes?
Mr. Newsom.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Stewart, you have any other thing to come before the board tonight?
No, sir, that is it for tonight.
Okay. All right, any other information before the board then? None. If not, a motion's in order to adjourn.
Make that motion.
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.